It's Brian Preston, the Money Guy.
Talk about this one all the time. A lot of you out there in the Money Guy family, you've heard me say this before, but I think it is so worth repeating because it is counter to what the narrative we hear in so many places right now. But number 7 is 80% of millionaires are first generation.
Now, what I love about this statistic, Brian, is it's sort of freeing, right? It was because I did not come from wealth. I did not come. I came from very humble beginnings. I know you are the same. And when I hear that 80% of millionaires are first generation, I hear, man, this is attainable. In the place in which we live, anyone has the opportunity to work hard, put the time in, figure out the 3 components of wealth building, and anyone can be a millionaire. I think that's an incredibly encouraging thing.
Well, I like it because it is motivating. You too can do this. But a lot of people might be looking at this and go, yeah, but is that a stat that you pulled from The Millionaire Next Door?
Sure.
And that book was written in the mid-90s, so maybe this is not timeless. I'm telling you, this is timeless because we've actually seen the research on this. And think about this, guys. In the next Millionaire Next Door, which Dr. Sarah, who's Thomas Stanley's daughter, continued his research on, she published in 1892, they found in their research, 84% of millionaires were first generation. Fast forward to 1996, I've already told you, the Millionaire Next Door came out with the 80% stat. And then you've got Ramsey Solutions has come out in 2019. It was 79%. And we even do our own wealth study of our own personal, millionaire clients at Abound Wealth. And the stat came in at 77%. That is too much to call it a coincidence that all these different sources say first generation, people did not come from money. They kind of started building and saving. And that's the other part that's not on this stat. I know it from my own research. The majority of these are not entrepreneurs. The majority of these are not big tech executives. The majority of these are not the virtuosos that are on the basketball court or the football field or playing an instrument. The majority of these people we're talking about are diligent savers just like you.
Now, what I think is so interesting is this statistic about 80% of millionaires are first generation was incredibly motivating to me early on and got me so excited about how level the playing field was and how we'd have the ability to end up getting there. But now, as I've had some success in life and as we've had some success in business, there is a dark side to that. There is a negative to that. And for the statistic to be true for hundreds of years here, that 80% of millionaires are first generation, that must mean that wealth disappears quickly. And this is what we know, that 70% of wealthy families lose their fortune by the 2nd generation. And then by the 3rd generation, 90% of wealth is wiped out.
It's a natural cleansing process that happens. And this is why, guys, if you come from a family of wealthy parents, please change this stat. Don't, if you are successful and you're raising children, pay attention to these stats too, because guys, I want us to change this because I think it's the saddest thing out there. Because what if instead of these people consuming the wealth that was created before them, they use this for the better good, that they used it for generosity, that they used it to grow something that got bigger and bigger? Because success doesn't mean you took from someone else. Success means that you actually grew the pie out bigger.
Yep.
And that's the part that bothers me about this generation, the whole generation loss of wealth between 2nd and 3rd, is that, man, there's just the opportunity cost is bad. So that's why here's the challenge for you. Ask yourself, am I a wealth creator or a wealth consumer? And I think if you'll look at it in that type of mindset, it will help you with that decision-making process, especially if you come from a family of means. Because if you find that you're consuming the wealth, rethink that.
You should change the cycle. All right, so this next statistic, Brian, I think this one allows us to take some pressure off. Because again, we live in this social media world where we see the fancy cars and the big houses and the young people with the fancy watches and the fancy clothes. I thought that this was sobering, but sobering in a comforting way, that most people don't become millionaires until age 49.
This is the stat that actually created this show. Because I was driving home and I was just thinking, my brain works in weird ways, but I was like, man, I just wish more people knew that the typical millionaire hit that at age 49, and there's so much to unpack from that number of 49. is because when do people graduate college? They graduate college around 22. That the difference between 22 and 49 is approximately 27 years of investing. When I look at the power of compounding growth, it's not the first 5 years of investing. It's not the first 10 years. It's after that money has had the time of staying and percolating and growing. It's after 20, 25 years that you start seeing that compounding growth. It's like a magical formula. Like when you're making a cake, when you put the eggs, you put the butter, you put the flour, it smells good, and you put the sugar. Don't forget the sugar. It tastes good, but something about when you put it in the oven and then watch it rise, and then there's something from a chemical standpoint that is going on. The same thing happens with money. If you can get those components of, if you think about discipline, money, and time all together, it makes that big, beautiful financial cake that you can smell. It permeates your entire life, and it just makes you happier and more fulfilled too.
One, you just made me incredibly hungry, and two, I agree. But don't just take our word for it. Don't just take our word. That 49 is the average. Look at the actual numbers. We had FTED pull this together for us. I want to show you the power of time. What happens if I invest $500 a month over different lengths of time? And why don't we pick $500 a month? That's just maxed out a Roth IRA right now, $6,000 a year. And this is what we thought was so interesting. If you do that for 5 years, at the end of that 5-year period, about 18% of your ending value would be growth.
It doesn't visually. We have a chart up right now for all of our podcast listeners. You don't even see the growth because it's just not as big enough portion of it.
If you were to do this for 10 years, at the end of the 10-year period, about 34% of your ending portfolio value is growth.
I'm starting my eyes. Remember, I'm getting those eyes of a 50-year-old that are starting to go away. So it's I can barely see the sliver of growth, but that's not even telling the full story.
If you do this for 20 years,
there it is.
59% of your total portfolio value is for growth. 59% of the value of your army of dollar bills is not from soldiers that you put in the army. It's from recruits that those soldiers went out and grabbed. It's from your army of dollar bills growing.
So here's what I think is so interesting, because it's easy after you, especially somebody who's in their 20s who starts doing this. After you're going to look back in 5 years and go, is this worth it? I feel like I'm sacrificing a portion of today. Am I really getting something out of this? And then you fast forward 5 years, and now you're 10 years of being a saver and investor, and you're like, okay, I see a little bit, but I just don't know. This doesn't feel like it's overwhelming. I feel like I'm putting more in than I'm getting harder, out of it. So maybe I should be living more for the day. And believe me, there's enough voices out there in the marketplace that are telling you that. But if you can just keep putting it in, keep letting it do its magical thing, at year 20, you can see 59% of the account value, more than you put in, is actually from the growth, not from you saving and investing. And then it gets even bigger, because look at that. 30 years in, now of your total account value, 76% is growth. You're only putting in 25% or 24% of the total account value. And then what happens at 40, Bo?
At 40, and let's assume this is an entire working career, 40 years you've been in the workforce. If all you did was just do the $500 a month for that 40 years, at the end of that 40-year period, 86% of the account value would be growth. 86% would be money that was created while you were sleeping, while your army of dollar bills was working for you. It's unbelievable if you can just give it time to do what compounding interest does.